Welcome to Planet America. I'm John Barron.
I'm Chas Licciardello, and we've got another situation.
As the Texas Democrat James Talarico continues to poll neck and neck against Republican Ken Paxton.
He is in trouble, Ken Paxton.
Both the president and White House escalated a war of words today with Georgia Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff.
He wants to build his ballroom and travel with Natalie.
Who is Natalie Harp?
These Republicans are truly losing their mind.
A series of scandals have hit the midterm elections and the rumours are flying thick and fast.
We're going to try and sort out fact from fiction for you, but first...
A fortnight after launching a war against Iran in late February, President Trump was telling the American people it would probably be over soon.
Whatever it takes, we will always, and we have right from the beginning, we projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go far longer than that.
But as the weeks stretched into a month and now almost 6 months, that capability is severely diminished.
According to one estimate, the war has used up 2/3 of America's Patriot missiles and more than half of its long-range missile interceptors.
That shortage of missiles was reportedly part of the reason Trump pulled back from launching additional massive strikes against Iran earlier this month, which he'd threatened would be the biggest attack since World War II. The president, though, continues to deny there's any problem with munitions.
We have plenty. We have a lot of ammunition. Different types, more than we could ever use no matter what. But we have a lot. I'd like to have more, to be honest.
Mixed messages? And it's not like you can just go and buy a Patriot missile at Walmart. The munitions can take as long as 2 years to produce. Meanwhile, the US Navy has been all at sea, literally in the case of the aircraft carrier USS Lincoln, for 9 months now.
5,000 sailors and Marines have been aboard a San Diego-based Navy aircraft carrier for 250 days. They are supporting the war with Iran. Families say their loved ones are beginning to deal with food shortages, plumbing problems, and those mounting mental health concerns.
And those concerns include the Lincoln crew struggling with exhaustion and declining morale, reports of suicidal thoughts, and the news that multiple sailors have tried to go overboard. The Navy, however, claims it has not seen an increase in reported suicide attempts or suicidal ideation on board. It does say it's investigating an incident in which a sailor fell overboard and was recovered. Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth says things really aren't that bad.
Completely misrepresented. Listen, we make sure at every ship, every crew, every captain has everything we can provide them at every single moment.
So says the former host of Fox and Friends Weekends, but the crew of the Lincoln have told their families otherwise. At least they're now finally heading home, being relieved after a record-long deployment. But there are plenty of questions that still remain, Chas.
Yeah, they do. And just to put it all in context, John, the Lincoln was deployed for 272 days in the end, with over 200 days since they'd last had a proper stop at a port. Now, normally, aircraft carriers stop at friendly ports every 30 to 45 days. Probably not coincidentally, that ship was then reportedly experiencing water contamination, plumbing problems in their toilets, disruptions in their mail delivery, and significant food shortages. I mean, look at this tasty feast from the USS Lincoln that went viral. Yum yum, save some nondescript meat-like substance for me, please. But apparently the problem was that they needed to be deployed even longer.
Has the deployment's gone on too long?
No. Not nearly long enough.
Sadly, that view wasn't very well received, but the biggest problem wasn't what was happening on the USS Lincoln, it was why that was happening. It was because Iran attacked the US Navy base in Bahrain and destroyed most of it. And how long do you think it took Iran to destroy America's critical naval base in the region and completely compromise their naval operations? Oh, they did it just after the first day of the war. And America couldn't use their second most important base in Oman because they had no way of defending that port against the might of Iran either. So that shows you the reality of how much dominance America actually enjoys in the Middle East. And an even bigger problem is what America had to do to remedy this situation. They had to deploy the USS George Washington to the Middle East, which means America no longer has an aircraft carrier in the entire Indo-Pacific region to counter China. Until now, that was pretty much an unheard of situation. You see, the US is currently only maintaining 11 aircraft carriers in total, and that's the congressionally mandated minimum. It's barely producing new ships at the same rate as it's having to retire the old ones. Part of that problem is they keep on delaying the new ships from being produced. For example, last week we also learned that the Trump administration ordered the Navy to change the electromagnetic system of launching jets on their new aircraft carriers back to the old steam catapults that they used to use, because Trump prefers the steam catapults. Now, this is all despite the new Chinese aircraft carriers also using the electromagnetic system, and also despite the electromagnetic catapults being able to launch aircraft at faster speeds, with fewer sailors needed to operate them, and using less space on the ship. And by the way, needing less sailors, that's a good thing, because the Navy's facing a 20,000 sailor shortage, if you don't mind. But on the other hand, Trump has watched Top Gun, so he's quite a fan of the old steam system.
And I love the sight of that beautiful steam pouring off that deck with the electric. You don't have that. So, you know, we did the Ford and electric. The cost overruns everything else. But, you know, I hope it's going to be okay. But I like steam. We're going to go back to steam.
Swings and roundabouts. Look, that logic isn't super compelling, especially seeing as America's next aircraft carrier, the Doris Miller, already is halfway through manufacturing the parts for its electromagnetic catapult system, and them having to restart from scratch, that would mean significant cost, schedule and integration risks for the ship, at least according to the manufacturers. And that's not all. The Navy's apparently also considering another major redesign of this upcoming aircraft carrier because of what Trump thinks looks good. They're considering moving the multi-story command tower on the ship further forward to the middle of the ship, so the new ships can look more like the ships did back in World War II. Probably not of the highest importance, given delaying that new aircraft carrier means that an older, more expensive, less capable aircraft carrier is going to have to remain in service years past its planned retirement date, just because America needs to maintain that minimum of 11 aircraft carriers. Meanwhile, the ship shortage has not been helped by Trump commissioning a massive, super expensive battleship project, the Trump-class battleship, that Trump says will be the largest battleships we've ever built. This despite large battleships being considered extremely vulnerable to air power submarines and missiles. So, John, there is a missile shortage and there is a ship shortage, and it's not clear that either of them is going to be solved anytime soon.
Yeah, quite clear it's going to take a very long time. But for more on this, we spoke to Mackenzie Eaglen, a leading expert on US defence strategy and military readiness, or lack thereof, and co-chair of the National Commission on the Future of the Navy. Mackenzie Eaglen, welcome back to Planet America. What would you say are the most important lessons to take away from this ordeal that the crew of the USS Lincoln have endured?
Sailors and Marines are human beings who can endure long, difficult deployments, but the constant extensions of those can break the crew and break the ship and require more repair time later. So it really doesn't, it's not in the national interest to constantly extend carrier strike group deployments as this president has been doing, the one before him and the one before him. It's become a sort of constant demand signal for the Navy that's totally unsustainable. So remembering that, and as well, you know, and the Navy's got to get better at its logistics support. I understand Epic Fury is challenging. They keep having to relocate where they're resupplying, which is something that does happen in active conflict. And the Navy clearly needs more auxiliary vessels and other support logistics ashore to do a better job. And then lastly is the hit on Naval Air Station Bahrain was pretty significant. That is going to be a feature, not a bug, of modern warfare, unfortunately. And so this sort of hub-spoke system where you're constantly shifting locations is something that also needs to be planned for more regularly.
How bad, in your view, is the shipbuilding shortage at the moment? And how long do you think that will take America to fix if they went absolutely hell for leather?
All of Washington's attention is on fixing America's shipbuilding challenges, which are deep and systemic. It took decades to get to this moment. So it will take a few years to unwind. And the ship industrial base restoration and the money flow to support it has been underway for a good 5 years. Congress has really been leading on this. And it's starting to show some results. But to really turn it around will require probably another half decade, as well as rebuilding our core shipbuilders and ship repairers and bringing in some new entrants to support our traditional companies that do this type of work.
Mackenzie, at the same time as we're hearing all of this about the US Navy, we're also hearing that there's a potentially critical shortage of munitions. Missiles are literally running out, Patriots in particular. How does a situation like this come about? It seems as though it's not just the result of a couple of recent conflicts.
That's right. For the last several years, I've been screaming into the void that America has run out of munitions a half dozen times in the last 20 years. So this is not new, entirely foreseeable and knowable if policymakers wanted to have addressed it. Everybody's in on why this is a challenge. Many parties have helped create this unfortunate outcome. The key now is to truly fix it. And in previous times when we've run out of munitions, it was not fully addressed. It was partially addressed, but getting back to where the services were before Epic Fury wouldn't be good enough. And that's really the key. It's to build excess capacity and to have less optimistic war plans and assumptions behind how many munitions America actually needs to prosecute modern warfare, because obviously those requirements and assumptions are too low. That's exactly why we're running out of the key exquisite munitions, offensive and defensive today. It's very similar to shipbuilding as well, though. You know, we need to continue to build with our best companies that do world-class work and then bring in new entrants as well to broaden and expand that high-low munitions mix.
Mackenzie, when it comes to munitions, is America learning anything from Ukraine, which seems to fight in a totally different way than America does?
America is learning from Ukraine, but not enough and not quickly enough. Our system is not absorbing it broadly. There are pockets of lessons learned and lessons adapted from Ukraine. One of the most important is the new munition, which is can be a one-way attack drone. You don't need a missile when you can blow up an unmanned robotic aerial drone or a sea surface drone or even an undersea one if required. I'm sure there are other types as well, but that is adding a new type of munition to the suite of bombs, missiles, rockets, mines, and artillery. So I think there's some pockets of learning, there's some experimenting with that, but it's not universal and it's still episodic.
I wonder, when it comes to making those kinds of plans in defence procurement and design that can take many, many decades, how concerned are you that the technology and warfare itself is evolving so quickly that decisions made today could quickly be out of date? And in that context, what are the strategic vulnerabilities that worry you the most?
Features of modern warfare are longevity, violence, and mass. And what America lacks is volume. So while we have the world's most capable equipment and well-trained forces and doctrine and concepts of operations, what we lack is just sheer mass. If the enemy believes they can outlast the American military, then that is a vulnerability that must be overcome. And it needs to be overcome with more affordable, attritable mass for the US military. And so I know that's an effort in Washington. There are a lot of senior leaders, time, attention, and dollars flowing to addressing it, but it takes time. And what took decades to create cannot be unwound in 1 year or even 2.
Mackenzie Eaglen, thanks for being with us on Planet America.
Thank you.
It's now 10 weeks until the midterms, and Republican candidates have a lot of work to do to hold on to their Senate majority, with hopes of keeping control of the House of Representatives all but fading away. In Texas, scandal-prone Republican Ken Paxton trails Democrat James Tallarico by almost 2 percentage points in the Silver Bulletin average of polls. Bear in mind, it is 38 years since a Democrat, Lloyd Bentsen, won a Senate election in the Lone Star State.
Yes, but James Tallarico has a cunning plan, John. You can see from a recent Fox News poll, Tallarico was ahead by 3 points, even though net approval for Republicans was only 2 points to the negative, whereas net approval of Democrats was 9 points to the negative. So Tallarico is running way ahead of the Democrats. In fact, 24% of non-MAGA Republicans in Texas actively support Tallarico. He's kind of running a cross-party campaign. In fact, just this week, the Tallarico campaign hired a staffer from Republican John Cornyn, who just lost his primary, of course. But it's not just any staffer. They hired Cornyn's policy advisor, and they hired him to be Tallarico's deputy policy director. This is a Democrat hiring a Republican policy guy to be his deputy policy guy. That is a very unusual move, John, and not every Democrat is thrilled about him doing that, I've got to say. But so far, seems to be working for him.
Yes, it does. And Ken Paxton is pretty vulnerable, you'd have to say. He's got a sketchy record in public office to run on. He was indicted for security frauds. He was impeached by his fellow Republicans over corruption claims. And this week, he was accused of stealing stationery.
This is Ken Paxton. And this is Ken Paxton stealing someone's $1,000 pen. Here's what happened. The incident happened at the Collin County Courthouse, the same courthouse where Paxton would later be indicted for investment fraud. Paxton walked up to the trays next to the metal detectors, rummaged through them, and came across someone else's expensive Mont Blanc pen. He decided to take it for himself.
OK, that does seem a little worse than stealing a stapler from the office. But the pen in question belonged to another lawyer. This is Joe Joplin, who says the Mont Blanc was a gift from his wife. There's also another really juicy potential scandal that is being kicked along by Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff, who's running for a second term in Georgia. He's opened up more than an 8-point lead now over the Republican nominee, Mike Collins. And there is increasing buzz as well that if Ossoff wins this election in November, the 39-year-old may then launch a White House campaign. Ossoff has also proven to be quite effective at attacking President Trump, like this last week, targeting those problems we discussed earlier facing the US military.
And while the sailors on the Lincoln fight his war, while he fruitlessly drains our munitions and oil reserves, the president sleeps through his meetings. He golfs and trades stocks.
Then he added this.
See, he doesn't want to do the job. He wants to build his ballroom and travel with Natalie on their apparently defenseless flying palace gifted by the Emir of Qatar.
Now, if you're wondering who Natalie is, this is her, Natalie Harp, a personal aide who often travels with the president, handing him printouts of favourable news items and staying up late at night taking dictation for his social media posts. New York Times journalist Maggie Haberman examined the Trump-Harp relationship in her recent book Regime Change, co-written with fellow journalist Jonathan Swan.
Now, she's the only person in the staff in that world who loves him as much as his wife and kids. He would say to people during the interregnum period, you know, you'll all go off and make money. She'll never leave me.
Haberman and Swan also wrote that Harp left Trump what amounted to love letters, with one even reading, "You are all that matters to me." And this is Natalie Harp at the 2020 Republican convention, explaining why Donald Trump means so much to her.
Because I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for you.
And how was that?
They didn't give me the right to try experimental treatments, Mr. President. You did. And without you, I'd have died waiting for them to be approved.
Maybe, maybe not. Trump did pass laws to allow seriously ill patients the right to try experimental drugs in 2018. And Natalie Harp credits that law and Trump with curing her bone cancer. Fact-checkers, though, have struggled with this story. Snopes says it cannot be independently verified, leaving the claim that she's a cancer survivor, quote, unrated. Meanwhile, experts say that the treatment that Harp said she received was an FDA-approved immunotherapy drug for an unapproved use. It would not have been covered under the right to try law because the drug had already been approved.
Yeah, and also, importantly, Natalie Harp first posted on Twitter about receiving that treatment 2 months before Trump even signed the Right to Try Act. So that's a bit of a problem.
Yeah, credit where it's not due. Despite those doubts over her story, Harp was used in 2020 as a Trump campaign surrogate.
I mean, when you think about it, this is the first president who hasn't actually started a new war. I mean, when you look at what Joe Biden and Barack Obama, there was chaos all over the Middle East.
All right, that didn't age too well. But still, after Trump lost that election, Natalie found herself hosting her own show on the conservative One American News Network.
Do they just think we forgot how they were 3 years ago talking about kids in cages? they're putting more kids in cages.
That also aged pretty badly. And then, with Trump's re-election, Natalie found her loyalty rewarded with a plum job in the White House. But that was a little bit weird as well. She reportedly declined multiple times over more than a year to seek a routine security clearance normally obtained by West Wing staffers until the president himself intervened and she received the clearance. And of course, Washington, D.C. loves to gossip, and some have raised eyebrows as to just how close the 80-year-old president and the now 35-year-old aide have become, wondering if this could possibly be another Clinton-Lewinsky situation. And Jon Ossoff's remark last week was clearly aimed at fueling those rumours. So now, cue the wishful thinking AI clips.
People are saying, we spend too much time together.
Let them talk.
I wrote you something. A letter, 14 pages.
Wow.
Single-spaced.
I won't read it.
Can't be unseen, that one.
Now look, that AI clip was genuinely funny and disturbing in equal parts, but I don't think many people genuinely think there's something sexual going on here. If anything, it would be less creepy if there was something sexual. Natalie Harp has been obsessed with presidents for some time. She was fixated on the White House from a young age, according to her brother, and he said she wrote letters to previous presidents as well, including to George W. Bush during the Iraq War. She then seemed to latch onto Trump soon after her father died by suicide. So there could be a father figure thing going on here as well. Then there's her role in the White House, which, as you say, John, very unusual. This supremely devoted woman is actually Trump's main conduit to the outside world. She's always there with a portable printer, feeding Trump positive stories, complimentary social media posts, and other ego-boosting correspondence. Trump people call her the human printer. Even when Trump's advisors think they're meeting Trump privately, they'll sometimes find Harp just sitting there in their meeting as well. She has more access to Trump than anyone else. Haberman refers to Harp as Trump's human binky, like she's a baby security blanket, because she lathers him in cloying sycophancy. It's strange. And it was made even stranger by the White House's reaction to Jon Ossoff mentioning her. First, when asked about it, Trump elevated Ossoff by giving him one of Trump's lame nicknames.
Mr. President, yesterday Jon Ossoff said you'd rather travel with your aide, Natalie Harp, and build the ballroom than do your job as president. What is your response, Jon Ossoff?
You mean Pee Wee Herman? Pee Wee Herman lookalike? No, I would much rather do other things.
He then talked about the ballroom for 2 minutes straight, proving he wouldn't prefer to do other things, but leave that aside. Then the next time that reporter tried to ask Trump a question, he went volcanic.
You're fake news. You're a loud, boisterous person. You're fake news. Be quiet. Be quiet. Be quiet. You're a fake reporter, and you report fake news. Go ahead.
And then Trump's rapid response team jumped on that same reporter on Twitter in an extremely disproportionate fashion, tweeting, "Someday your children will come across your disgusting and inhumane question. They'll be sickened and embarrassed to have a parent be so callous and vindictive. It's quite troubling." Yes, it is quite troubling. Comms director Stephen Chung continued with the overreaction, tweeting, "John Jackoff has to be the biggest cuck loser in politics. John should look deep into his soul and ask himself why he's a miserable person who hates this country. It's because he's a radical extremist Democrat." And then the White House began a campaign to shield Natalie Harp, including reaching out to Conservative allies to tweet out a whole bunch of extremely angry defences of her. I think it's that overly sensitive reaction, John, that turned this topic into a big story. That and the large number of leaks that seemingly are coming from within the White House from her jealous rivals. And now there are heaps of articles about Natalie Harp out there, while Jon Ossoff seems to be more interested in just tying it back to the war.
Why'd you decide to invoke Natalie Harp specifically in that speech?
We're in wartime. The commander-in-chief has mired us in this geopolitical disaster. People have lost their lives. Our naval logistics are frayed. The global energy system is in crisis. And he retreats into this bubble of West Wing aides who are his security blanket to make him feel good about himself, to reassure him that he's doing a great job, to help him while he designs his new ballroom.
I think he's got good instincts, John. Natalie Harp is not going to be deciding this election, but that war might be.
Yeah, and he's certainly getting noticed right now. Meanwhile, in Michigan, Republicans have found a new line of attack against Democrat Abdul El-Sayed, who they've also described this week as a jihadist sympathiser. But now, apparently, he hates football.
Football is an American sport built on merit. And there's nothing wrong with that. Unless you're Michigan's Democrat Senate candidate.
Abdul El-Sayed, he says that football is racist, sexist, homophobic, and filled with toxic masculinity.
Choice of voiceover and the young black football fan in that ad suggests that the whole campaign is probably aimed at winning over African-American voters who make up about 15% of the Michigan population. Safe to say, we are going to be hearing a lot about Michigan in the run-up to November's election. So let's find out a little bit more about the place they call the Great Lakes State. Michigan, in the upper Midwest of the United States, still makes more cars and trucks than any other state. Detroit is still home to General Motors, Ford and Chrysler, but Michigan is not the economic powerhouse it was in the mid-20th century, and Detroit, once America's Motor City, is better known these days for urban decay and industrial decline. They call it the Rust Belt for a reason. Politically, Michigan is a major battleground and a bellwether, backing the winner of the past 5 presidential elections. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a Democrat, is term limited and can't run again this year. Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson is the new Democratic nominee up against Republican Congressman John James, while Whitmer might be gearing up for a White House bid in 2028. We'll see. Republicans currently hold 7 of Michigan's 13 House seats, with 3 considered competitive this year, including the one vacated by James. Both of Michigan's sitting senators, though, are Democrats. Alyssa Slotkin, who has 4 years to run in her term, and the retiring Gary Peters, who's leaving his seat open after 12 years in office. He believes there should also be term limits for senators, and he's walking the talk. There hasn't been a Republican elected senator from Michigan since 1994. Former Congressman and FBI Special Agent Mike Rogers wants to change that. He lost to Slotkin in 2024, despite being backed by Trump, but remains well-known statewide and could defy the odds against left-wing Democrat Abdul El-Sayed in what is otherwise shaping up to be a pretty tough year for Republicans.
It sure is. Michigan's often very close, John. Mike Rogers only lost in 2024 by 0.3 of a percentage point. But that was in an election when Trump won in Michigan by 1.4%. This time round, Trump's job approval is only 33%, with 63% disapproval. And there's a good reason for that. Trump's tariffs, for example. Michigan has lost 8,300 manufacturing jobs since Trump announced his Liberation Day tariffs. And Michigan's also a major gateway for commerce between the US and Canada. So the 50% tariffs that Trump announced this week on $20 billion of Canadian goods, as well as the $20 billion of expected retaliatory tariffs from Canada, are both going to affect Michigan a lot. This is all a particular problem for Mike Rogers, because while once he was considered his own man, Rogers in fact once denounced Trump's efforts to undermine the 2020 election as a cause for both concern and alarm. And said of Trump's role in the January 6 riots, "You're damn right you had responsibility for this." Well, lately, this has all changed. These days, Rogers says he's thankful for Trump's commitment to transparency when Trump goes on about elections. And he believes there are even voter fraud schemes being cooked up in Michigan. In fact, he said the only reason he lost in 2024 was because of voting irregularities. So now, Rogers is joined at the hip with Trump at a bad time to be associated with Trump. Republicans have tried to make this election about El Sayed's attitude to Israel. I'm not sure it's going to work. As of last month, 50% of Michigan voters weren't even familiar with the America-Israel lobby group, AIPAC, at all. They were talking about it in the ads constantly. Out of those who were familiar, 56% were negative about AIPAC, only 12% were positive. One more thing, both these candidates like to put out their own partisan polls to shape the narrative of the race. So before you quote a poll about Michigan, make sure you know whether it's independent or not, because this could be one of the most expensive races of all time, and it's likely going to go right down to the wire.
It's time for Donald's Word of the Day.
Affordability!
You may have only just heard it.
Affordability. It's the first time I heard the word.
And thought, what's that all about?
Affordability, they're screaming. I say, what's that all about?
Maybe it's fake.
The word affordability, it's a fake word.
Or made up by the Democrats?
It was made up by the Democrats.
But no, it just means high prices.
Affordability, it's called high prices.
Now you can use it to impress the president of Egypt.
Affordability, sir, affordability.
The president of the UAE.
What about affordability?
Even Marco Rubio loves hearing about affordability.
Affordability. I said I've been here for, remember with the eggs, the first day or 2 days later, I have my first news, and they talked about eggs. They said the eggs.
That's Donald's Word of the Day. Tune in for tomorrow's lesson.
Dumb. You take the B out. Most people don't know that dumb is a B.
And that is all for another trip to Planet America. I'll be back here with you at the same time next week on ABC TV, iView and online.
But I won't. I'm going under the knife. Hopefully they'll make me less weird. But in the meantime, there's a new pet podcast out where we're going to talk about the extremely lame prosecution of James Comey. I'll see you there.
Bye-bye.